Coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas.
The right side is the winning side.
The late move is the correct move.
Sports betting capital of the world.
We all know when a sharp like me weighs in, the lines move.
It's a party for your ears. This is The Buffet with Chad and Scooch.
I want to buy that guy a buffet.
We are back. This is Chad Millman. It's The Buffet with Chad and Scooch. On the phone with me from New Orleans, sportsbook director there and all the Boyd Gaming books in the state of Nevada, the Scooch part of The Buffet with Chad and Scooch, Bob Scoochie. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, listen, I'm really good because I went on the Pardon My Take podcast, which is a very popular sports podcast, and they asked me for a lock of the weekend, and I gave them the Giants plus 10 against the Chiefs, which was my Scooch Roulette pick as well.
I also gave that on a local show here as well and said that the Giants would win straight up.
You did not.
Yeah. Yep.
Looks like you know what you're doing.
Sometimes it works out. I also gave them the Cowboys, so how did that work out?
Yeah, not so great. Listen, later on in the show, Jonathan Addo, who was our very first fan guest for Scooch Roulette because he had the most people sign up for the Action Network newsletter. Don't forget, The Buffet is brought to you by the Action Network, and we have a newsletter. You can go to actionnetwork.com, put your email address in the box, get our newsletter. Thousands and thousands of people are getting this newsletter every single day, which I'm writing, and it's a blast to do. We get a lot of contributions from all the people creating content for us within the Action Network universe. Scooch, Jonathan's going to come on. He's always a trip, man. Remember, he came on, he gave us the no dips. He gave us that moral dilemma about the fantasy league. He's not a big fan of teasers. He's going to give us a little Detroit action because he's from Detroit. They got a big game this weekend, or this Thursday against Minnesota, which I think is one of the marquee matchups. We're going to answer some questions that people have for you on Twitter. We're going to get to our picks. We have so much to do. It's going to be a very busy 45 minutes or so. But the very first thing that we got to talk about, so it's Monday. We normally record the podcast on Wednesday, but we're doing it today to get ahead of the Thanksgiving games. And listen, that Eagles game, it had everything that scares the death out of you. So tell me what was happening for you in that game, because nothing about it looked pretty.
Nothing at all. Early on in the week, I had a couple of meetings with some colleagues in town, and I just brought up the subject. I said, "Are you guys as scared of this Eagles game as I am?" And the sentiment around town was the same, because the liability is so much greater on the Sunday night game. You have all the parlays rolling over to it. So going into that game, it could have been much, much worse than what it was. Had the Giants that you just mentioned, had they not won against the Chiefs, because every parlay in the world would have been rolling onto that Eagles game. It was one of the biggest games of the year, and I think we even said it last week that it was going to be one of the biggest games of the year in terms of actual bet amounts, line movement. The line closed 6.5 and actually hit 7 in some places. And if you remember, the Eagles opened up a 3-point favorite. We ended up getting crushed on the game and lost about half of the day's profits just on that one game. But it would have been much, much worse had it gone over. Just one more point in that game would have been double the loss that we had on that game. So if there was one saving grace, that was it.
Seriously, you were 1 point away from that game going over and losing even twice as much money.
Yeah, we were all, at some point we were at 47.5, we were at 48, 49, but most of the bets came in at 48.5 and 49. So by literally one more point would have put it over the margin for us, especially when you have them on parlay cards that are kind of fixed and printed and they don't change throughout the week. So, yeah, that one more point would have put it over. And if you saw the end of that game, it was really a miracle that there was no more points scored, because they were sitting at 48, I think, with about 8 or 9 minutes left in the game.
Well, you know what, Scooch? I didn't see the end of that game because As soon as the +6 for the Cowboys was clearly out of reach, I'm like, screw it. I'm done. I'm going to bed.
The good thing about these totals is it kind of keeps you in play a little bit, makes you watch the rest of the game.
What was interesting, Eddie Zemaitis, who was our guest last week, our sort of our Scooch Roulette guest picker. Why did he get to come on? He came on. Why did Eddie come? Oh, Eddie was our moral dilemma last week. Eddie Zemaitis from Rochester, New York, was our moral dilemma, our executive decision last week with the moral dilemma, and that we had to weigh in on. But then we let him do a Scooch Roulette pick. He was all in on the Cowboys at +3, and he tweeted me today and said, "Did Scooch lose his lungs on that game?"
Yeah. It was pretty bad, but like I said, we were fortunate. Two big games yesterday. The Redskins covering against the Saints and the Giants covering against the Chiefs were two of the big parlay games that prevented us from really getting annihilated for the day. Just so many money line parlays and teasers on the Chiefs that got knocked down. But still, it was a horrible game for us, especially since the Patriots also covered easily. So. Anyone that lost in the early games, they certainly got even by putting in a little Chargers, Patriots, Eagles parlay that came in easily.
All right, Scooch, let's get to some questions. Here's a great question from Ben Taylor. At Ben Taylor, let me make sure I get the whole thing. At Ben Taylor 05. How do you discern sharp action in a matchup between two public teams like, Michigan and Ohio State?
How do we determine sharp action? We talked about it before, how we book to faces. There's a lot of people that we know of over the years and professional bettors, so we kind of know who the bets are coming from them. But if it's an unknown player and we want to determine if it's sharp, we'll generally compare lines around town. Like if everybody's at 12 on the game and we're at 11 and he's laying the 11, we have to assume it's pretty sharp. If he's taking the 11 when there's 12 down, then we assume that, not that he's, not sharp, but maybe he's just not a professional bettor.
You assume that he's dumb. Because why would someone?
I would never say that about a guest.
Why would someone come in and take +11 if they can get +12 somewhere else? That is a pure indication.
I'll tell you exactly why.
I'll tell you why. No, I'll tell you why. Right. You tell me why, and then I'll tell you why.
I'll tell you why, because we're a casino. We're not just a sports book. So let's say a guy buys in with $1,000 at the crap table, and he just goes on a run, and he builds it up to 20,000 and said, "Hey, let me bet this game that I really like before I lose some of this money back on the tables." Walks over to the sports book. What's the line on this game? We tell him, boom, give me 10,000 on this game. That's how it works.
Like I said.
Now you tell me why he wouldn't do it.
I was actually going to say the same exact thing. I'm going to say it's someone who's at the casino. They don't really feel like walking around town shopping lines. Here's a question that I do want to discuss, though. This was a really good idea. Mike Kearns, who is the president of Churn and Digital, who was the guy who sort of started this whole Action Network thing with Scooch. I know you're still sort of getting up to speed on, but it's the reason I am doing the job. He's the reason I'm doing the job I'm doing today. He had a really interesting idea about what would a modern sports book look like? Like we should do that on the podcast. We should ask people for their suggestions about what a modern day sports book should look like. So I want people, when they listen to the podcast, to start weighing in, and then I will take my best suggestions from Twitter, and I'll bring some people on, and we'll talk about what we think a modern day sports book should look like. Because you're right, you're part of a casino. So while we think it's sort of the end all be all, for a lot of people they're doing 5 different things, and the sports book is one complementary component of that.
Right. So it's funny because I often thought of that if I had an unlimited budget and we're building a new sports book, what are some of the things that would go in it? And I kind of got a little taste of it about 10 years ago when we were our company was working on the Echelon, which was the property that was going to take over where the Stardust was. and some of the ideas that were tossed around back then were just phenomenal. So yeah, I often thought about that. It's a great angle.
Well, we're going to get into it, Scooch. We're going to get into it.
I'm not going to give anything away.
We're going to, well, maybe you will on the podcast that has your name on it.
Okay, maybe.
Right? Maybe you'll think about it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Here's the tweet from Eddie Zamitis, who, does Scooch have any lungs left after the Cowboys not covering for my Scooch roulette pick? How was yesterday in general? You kind of answered it. It ended up being okay, but not great because of what happened at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think I even mentioned it last week. All the picks between the four of us that were on the show, you, me, and the two guests, that if all four of them had won, it probably would have been the biggest day in the sports books that I've had in maybe 15 years. So we didn't get the Raiders against the Patriots. We didn't get the Cowboys, and still we ended up okay, good, not great. Mainly because of the couple of games, I singled out the Redskins and the Giants. There's so many different variables that can dictate exactly how your day goes. Not just the underdog covering, but if the underdog is at least a touchdown underdog and wins the game straight up, and it knocks down all the teasers or dips, as we like to now call them. Or the money line parlay. So there's whether the games go over or under also helps out. Like I just mentioned, that game staying under really, really helped out. I can't tell you how much. And then going into we're recording this on a Monday, like you just mentioned. So tonight's game, we're in a lose-lose situation, and I always have a hard time explaining this to some of the executives sometimes, how you can be in a position where you're going to lose no matter who wins. And a lot of times it's just because of those parlays. There were a lot of favorites that covered yesterday. I mean, a lot of them were small favorites, 2 points, 1 point, but they were still favorites. So that liability in terms of parlays carries over into the Monday night game on both sides. So somebody's got an 18 parlay with 7 winners and they need the Falcons. And then another guy's got an 18 parlay with 7 winners, and he needs the Seahawks. So both of we're going to lose no matter what because one of them is going to hit. And that's the situation we're in today. So sometimes you don't get the full brunt of it on Sunday. Sometimes you get the brunt of it on the Monday night game.
How much is that going to cost you, those 2 teasers? One or the other, one of them.
Well, we lose a little bit more on the Falcons than we do the Seahawks because there's way more parlays and teasers on the Falcons. At one point, they were able to get the Falcons, tease them up to plus 9.5 from plus 2.5. Now the line's actually gone down to close to a pick 'em. So there's parlays and teasers on the Falcons, and then there were some of the early parlays on the Seahawks. So it's an ugly game.
It is a really ugly game. Listen.
When they ask me who we need, I say we need them to cancel the game, and then we only lose a little bit.
Hey, by the way, I got a new Millmanism. Yesterday, somebody asked me a question on Twitter, and I gave them an answer, and they said, "Well, now they have felt stupid all day," and what did I say exactly? I think it was essentially like, everybody feels stupid all day until the end of the game, then everybody thinks they know what they're talking about. Something like that. Do we think we can make that a Millmanism?
If you clean it up.
You're right. That was not as smooth. It right. It's not as smooth as I would have liked it to be. And it was good. It was so good. Tell me, what are you doing about the Eagles right now? Because last night was such a massive win for them in a public fashion. You need to figure out how you're readjusting for that.
Well, they're second now next to the Patriots. So they've been, kind of going back and forth between the best team and the second best team. The Patriots had their little spell where they were kind of banged up, and we maybe dropped them a tiny bit in the rankings, but we never really dropped the Patriots from being at the top of the heap. But in terms of betting, and we talked about this a little bit, there's no team more popular than the Eagles going into. There was the Eagles and the Saints, and with the Saints not covering, against the Redskins, it's now clearly the Eagles and the Patriots in terms of, no, it doesn't matter what line we put up on the board, they're going to lay the number. The betting public is. So the question we have to think of is how high do we have to make it before we get a little money from the professional bettors? I think the professional bettors kind of went in and took the Cowboys last against the Eagles Sunday night, kind of holding their nose a little bit. Like we have to take this because it's at 6.5 and 7. Maybe we don't like it, but we have to take it. And so that's kind of where we're going with some of these mismatches that we're looking at this week, with a lot of good teams playing a lot of bad teams, laying some huge numbers. These are some of the biggest numbers that we've seen all season. And it's just keep trying to take into account the Eagles are just going to keep rolling, and the betting public is just going to keep laying the number until they get tripped up somewhere. And that's the only way that the bettors are going to back off a little bit is when they get burned just one time. And when we haven't seen that one time in a while.
I found the Millmanism, and Mike Grinnell, I feel like we need to get Grinnell up to speed. Like, we need to start making some Millmanisms and Scoochisms, and he's got to be able to drop them in, and we'll give him the update on what that is. I don't know if Grinnell was a listener to Behind the Bets back when we were on ESPN.
Of course.
So he might not know about the Millmanisms and Scoochisms. So last night, a guy named Brooks Wilson tweeted something at me. He said, "Great, now I feel stupid about some game that we were talking about." I said, "Don't feel stupid. Nobody knows nothing until it's over. Then we know everything." And then at the real Fraz, Franco Belmonte said, "That's a pretty good Millmanism for the pod. Nobody knows nothing until it's over. Then we know everything."
I like it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of like a yogiism.
Totally right. All right.
Yogi Berra, Yogi.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Yogi Berra. I got a great Yogi Berra story, but I'm going to have to save it. I have to save it.
Okay.
I can't do it today.
Okay.
I'm going to tease the audience. They'll have to listen next week to hear the Yogi Berra story.
Nice.
Minnesota's at Detroit. Minnesota it's about pick right now, right? We pick here?
We're
2? Oh, Jesus
we're up to
Christ.
2.5. We are up to 2.5.
Oh,
yeah.
no. Oh,
Yep.
no. Listen, in the Action Network newsletter, which you can sign up for at actionnetwork.com. And don't forget, Jonathan Addo's coming on with his Scooch Roulette pick at the end, and he's always a character. This game was at pick last night. I wrote, this is a no-brainer to take the Lions. No-brainer. And that's when it was at pick. Because the look-ahead line was Lions minus 1.5. Now it's a 4-point swing, switching sides. This is a public game, a public team, first game on Thanksgiving. If you're not taking the Lions, then you don't deserve to have your money.
Well, let me just say the Lions have not been good to us this year at all. I mean, it seems like whatever side we need with this Lions team, we get the opposite result. But we put this line up last night, and the number, according to our rankings and the way we normally put up a line, the Lions should have been a 2-point favorite. And so we're getting ready to put the numbers in the computer, and we're actually seeing some other offshore places going down to the Lions -1. So we hung the Lions -1 instead of -2, and I'm in agreement with you. I really felt that the Lions would be the wise guy play. But the first bet out of the gate as soon as we hung the line was a $7,000 bet on Minnesota at +1. And bets followed since then, all Vikings. I mean, now we know a lot of it's public, but at least one of them was from a guy that fairly well respected, and maybe he's just putting himself in a position where he's getting a good number on the Vikings now, and then knowing he can get maybe +3 by game time on Detroit. But all the money so far has been Vikings, and I was a little surprised at just how much. And so we're at 2.5 right now. We're going to end up needing the Lions come Turkey Day early on.
Hey, here's a question about Turkey Day, speaking of which. At Deuskers, what is it? At Deuskers McGee, what's your best Thanksgiving side dish?
I like the stuffing. There's a certain stuffing that my family makes that it's got these nuts in it and a little sweetness. It's the stuffing for sure.
I like it. I like stuffing too.
What about you?
Stuffing. Yeah, big fan of stuffing. Yeah. Like it. I like Stouffer's stovetop stuffing.
Oh please! Oh my God! Seriously?
I feel like you're making a judgment there, and I'm not comfortable with it. It makes me sad.
A little bit. It kind of reminds me of the college days when it was up there, and along with the top ramen and the mac and cheese.
Well, now you've described the only things in my house because that's all my kids.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Listen up. The Los Angeles Chargers, the streaking Los Angeles Chargers against the fading Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. That game looks to be with the It's basically pick. It's pick.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a change, right?
Yeah, this line opened up 3.5 Dallas with, now in all fairness, that 3.5 was the places that put up the line prior to the Dallas game against the Eagles. So there was a huge adjustment on how they looked against the Eagles, and we that's 2 games in a row now that the Cowboys have just looked as bad as a team can look. I mean, they look like the Browns. We could almost throw out. A lot of people were willing to throw out the Cowboys-Falcons game because Tyron Smith got injured during the game. We know that they didn't make the proper adjustments for that left tackle, protecting the pass rush for Dak Prescott, and then they lost Sean Lee. So you could almost understand the collapse in the Falcons game. But with a week to prepare and to make some proper adjustments, there's 2 weeks in a row. There's absolutely no reason to have any confidence in this Cowboys team right now. So, yeah, the public money and the sharp money is going to be on the Chargers, who are the complete opposite right now and are looking as good as they've looked all season. And there were some people at the beginning of the season that actually had pretty high hopes for this Charger team. So we saw about a 3.5 point line change. Now, normally the betting public bets the Cowboys no matter what on Thanksgiving Day, but I think this year is going to be a little bit of a change. I mean, it's a short week for both teams, but a little bit shorter for Dallas because they played the late game on Sunday. So there's that as well. So everything points to the Chargers here.
I got to tell you, their defense is sneaky, all of a sudden best in the league defense.
Yeah, I mean, they were highly touted at the beginning of the year for being a defensive team and not letting up a lot of points. And they don't get a lot of publicity and hype because they're kind of in the, playing in the soccer stadium and everything out there in LA. And so yeah, they're kind of flying under the radar a little bit.
All right, last game of the day on Thanksgiving. No one's really interested in this game. This is like, if not for being the only game at that time, it'd be the corner TV game. The Giants at the Redskins. The Redskins are 7.5 favorites.
Well, this matchup used to have so much more significance in the NFC East, so it still has a little bit of tradition. So seeing them on Thanksgiving is probably a nice little touch. But by that late on Thanksgiving, I think everybody will have maybe a little too much wine and food and may not be paying attention. So it will be the corner game. But I'm glad the Giants were able to get a victory. Otherwise, we'd be completely lopsided in the betting on this one. We're using the Washington Redskins, a 7.5 point favorite. All the money right now is on the Redskins from the public. And I could only imagine how much more it would have been had the Giants not actually shown some signs of life against the Chiefs. Now, the sharp guys have actually gotten a little bit of the Giants at plus 7.5, so I think they're going to be on the opposite side of the public in this one.
You're still going to need the Giants.
Well, we definitely still will. I mean, it's it's usually Thanksgiving is usually favorite, and favorite. That's the way the betting goes. It's favorite and over. So I know we already know the Vikings are going to be the biggest game of the day. I think the Chargers, being that game is now a pick 'em. I will get two-way on that one, and then every parlay in the world will be on the Redskins.
I feel like Thanksgiving is like, it's like not favorite, and favorite. It's stuffing, and stuffing.
Yeah, it pretty much is.
That's what it is.
I mean, I'll be at work all day, so I'll wait till halftime of the Giants Redskins. So maybe like 7:00 at night, I'll kind of roll into the family somewhere and have a little drink and watch the second half.
Some drink, a cigar, some stuffing. It'll be like you are living like the king that you are in your courtyard in your Italian villa in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
You and the tarantulas. Cleveland and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's an 8-point favorite. This Cincinnati team is a sneaky cover team. We talked about them last week. The Wise Guys were on them heading into Denver. They easily covered that game, obviously, because they won. So 8's pretty high. I can't imagine getting action on this game at this point. This will be the corner TV game.
Yeah, but the Browns are just such a bet against team. 2 weeks in a row now, you saw a Browns team that should have been a lock to at least cover the spread. And in 1 week against the Lions, they throw an interception on the last play of the game to not cover. And then this week against the Jaguars, their own territory and allow a fumble recovery in the end zone to make the Jaguars cover, who were laying as much as 8.5. They should have never covered that spread. So the Browns, and we've talked about it every week, how when you're betting on a bad team, you're just holding your breath, waiting for something bad to happen. And the Wise Guys, they still have to take him almost in principle. It's like every time you have too much to drink and you get hammered and you say, oh my God, I'm never going to drink again. And then the next week you're back and you take another drink. That's kind of like betting on the Browns. It's the same way.
I feel like that's all there is to say about this game. Meanwhile, so then you got the Bears going on the road. A lot of big numbers this week, massive numbers, and this is one of them. The Eagles are 13.5-point favorites, 14.5 at 5 dimes. I don't know what you guys have them listed at right now.
13.5, getting ready to go to 14. 13.5 minus 20. And like we just talked about with this Eagles team, how high do I have to make them? I mean, prior to last night's game, this line probably would have only been maybe 11.5, 12. Had to make an adjustment just based on another game and another huge cover. And the Bears actually looked pretty decent against the Lions. So, you take that into account as well. The Bears defense has really kept them in a lot of games, and the game, you look at some of the games that they've won this year. They beat the Steelers, they beat the Panthers. As bad as the Bears are, they're able to be competitive mainly because of the defense. So can they come up big in this one? No chance of winning this game outright, but certainly getting 13.5. We think that's the number that'll draw at least some sharp action. If it doesn't, we'll go to 14. But we have to try and balance out some of the parlay money that we know is going to come in on the Eagles.
But you haven't gotten any sharp action on it yet.
Not yet, and that's why we opened 13.5. We went 13.5 minus 20, and like I said, we're ready to go to 14.
Go to 14 right now. Do it. Do it. Do it. We have theme music. Let's keep the streak going. Come on, just do it. What are you waiting for? You get a little sharp money. Come on, just do it.
I can't do it yet. I gotta wait. I'd love to. I gotta wait.
What do you have to wait on?
I gotta wait.
What are you waiting on? What are you waiting on? Costa Rica's got to move it first?
Costa Rica, come on.
I just had to. It was too. You know why I did it?
All right.
You know why I did it?
Why?
You know why I did it? It was a question from a user. Super Mario, at Super Mario. How do you set the line since everyone says the lines come from Costa Rica? What exactly does he do? Someone's coming after you.
What does who do?
What do you do?
So we have the same odds makers and consultants that I've been using since the Stardust days. Some very good friends that have been very successful dating many years back. They make lines on every game for me. We have about 5 different consultants, and we look at their lines. But ultimately, if Costa Rica or one of the islands puts out a number prior to us going up, then yeah, we're going to look at them because we know they're taking big money, and that can give us an indication of where the betting is going to go. So if those lines are up before us, we'll just use them to gauge where we want to be on a game. So if my consultants say a game should be 11 and Costa Rica hangs 13, I know that I can hang 12 and get all the money I want at minus 12, or vice versa. I could kind of dictate where I want the money to go based on another number being already out there.
You know what? That is a very good non-defensive answer. I appreciate your professionalism in the face of confrontation.
I try once in a while.
You know what you are?
What's
You're
that?
a talent. You are a talent. Speaking of talent, Tom Brady's pretty good, and the Patriots are 17-point favorites over the Dolphins this weekend, and that is the largest point spread of the season so far, and the largest in the NFL since the Patriots were 17-point favorites over the Jets in Week 16 last year. Sign up for the ActionNetwork.com newsletter to get information like that, because we had it in the newsletter this morning.
Yeah. So, again, just like the Eagles game, how high do we have to make this? Now, Miami, Jake Cutler was out. He's not definitely out, but he's going through a possible concussion again. So, add that to the mix, and this Patriot line can just keep creeping up more and more. 17 is an automatic take for the sharp guys. So you're going to see this number bouncing back and forth, 16 and a half, 17. The sharp guys have gotten burned many times betting against the Patriots. It's kind of a thing now. You don't get rich betting against the Patriots. Everybody kind of knows that. But again, you stick to your principles. It's like playing blackjack and hitting on 16 against a picture card. You may not like doing it, but you have to stick with it and you can't alter and play different. Otherwise, you may end up on the wrong side every time.
Right. If you play long enough, like, the percentages are going to go in your favor.
Yes, and that's the situation here. You may not like betting on Miami at plus 16.5 or plus 17, but that's really what the sharp handicapper will do, and the public will just lay it and say and hope, just like the Eagles and the Patriots did last week, just run up a big number. The Patriots have the Bills in Buffalo next week. They're coming off of the game in Mexico City, so maybe it's kind of an in-between game where, okay, they really don't have to win by 20 or 30 points. So that's another angle you just have to look at.
So speaking of the Buffalo Bills, they're in Kansas City next week. They're 9.5-point underdogs. Tyrod Taylor is listed as the starting quarterback. Tell me what it was like in the book when Nathan Peterman's throwing almost as many completions to the Chargers as he was to his own team.
Oh my God! It was just like I heard the roar of the crowd, and I can actually tell from my office. Now, you've been in my office. And I can tell the what is happening in a game if I'm not watching it by the cheering. There's different types of cheers. There's short, loud cheers, which is kind of like something happening unexpectedly and it's over real quick. But then there's those long, sustained cheers that I know are an interception returned for a touchdown. And those are the ones where you hear just a loud uproar and then a go, yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and boy, if you watch Nathan Peterman now, I think at least 2 of those interceptions were probably not. I wouldn't say all on him, but when you throw 5, oh my goodness. I mean, that game was over so fast in the first quarter. It became a corner TV game.
It's like I can imagine Nathan Peterman going to his coach and being like, "Coach, imagine how much worse it would be if I wasn't good at this."
I think his QB rating was, 17?
I don't know, man, but it was all freaking ugly.
Yeah, so even still, I mean, the Chiefs coming off of the loss against the Giants, they really need this one. They're going to be up for this one. Back at home, another big number. The Bills are, sliding down. They have to go back to at least being competitive. So that the Taylor start just makes sense for them. But another big number here that we're hoping that I think 10 is the number that the sharp guys will want. They're not really taking 9.5.
All right. Why isn't there a number for Tampa Bay, Atlanta?
Atlanta's playing tonight. So, the line will come out, Atlanta, about 9.5 or 10 against Tampa. But it would just usually they would wait until they play tonight and make sure there's no key injuries before putting out that line.
I think we're going to skip that game anyways, because that is really going to be a corner TV game. Like, all of a sudden you got 2 teams from the South that nobody cares about because they're middling or bad.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. Carolina and the Jets. Carolina's a 4-point road favorite. Boy, this lines up. This Carolina team is getting so good, and the Jets, I think the Jets peaked, and I think we got them sort of in their peak moment. You know how you go during a season and like you can feel when it's the right side, and all of a sudden it doesn't feel like the right side anymore.
Absolutely. I am so on the right side with you on this one. That's why I want to be the highest in town on this.
See, this is where, by the way, let me interrupt your prescient comments here, because this is where Mike Grinnell, he's going to come in and he's going to drop the right side is the winning side.
Another Millmanism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know if we're even doing Scoochisms anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if I even have them anymore.
You're out of this business. I'm cutting you. I'm taking your name off the podcast.
But getting back to this game, this is really a great spot for Carolina. Like you just hit the nail on the head with the Jets peaking. I mean, they're being adjusted for 10 weeks. You know, they went from being what was predicted to be the worst team in the NFL, gradually adjusted, and at some point they just got over-adjusted to where this is really a short. Normally, I would say you take the home dog, and there's not a whole lot of home dogs this week. But this is one where I would probably tend to lean towards the favorite. Carolina's getting back to full strength. Maybe getting Greg Olsen back, and Cam Newton had his little time. We had a couple of games like against the Bears where he threw a couple of picks and didn't play his best game, but he's kind of rebounding. They need to win these games to stay competitive in a real tough division. So I would look for them to come out strong in this one.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's time to fade the Jets, and I don't like fading home dogs at all. Like we're such hypocrites. We just said like you got to play your situation every single time. You know, you can't hit on face cards, whatever it's going to be, and yet here we are, like 3 minutes later, we're like children.
Exactly. Well, that's the beauty of this business. It's so not black and white. If it was, we could have just a chart that I could give to all the guys that move the lines and just say, every time this happens, do this, and every time this happens, do this. But you can't do that. And a lot of it is you kind of fly by the seat of your pants and you do what just seems right sometimes.
It really is. All right, we got Tennessee at Indy. Tennessee, another one. This is a side we're talking about. It's part of this is challenging because we don't know if Jacoby Brissett is playing, right?
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah. So
I mean, if
you got
playing,
Scott Tolzien, and I mean he has been so there has been quite a bit of an upgrade when Brissett was in there. If you remember the Tolzien days, so I think
it was the Tolzien half. I think the days is a little bit more than we can expect.
Yeah. So Tennessee certainly has been kind of up and down as well. They played a real nice half against the Steelers and then just kind of fell apart. So they keep the games close. So to be this sizable we're probably looking at about a 4.5 point favorite on Tennessee. That's with Jacoby Brissett. So if it does come out that there's no Brissett, then Tennessee's going to be more than a touchdown favorite in this one. And I would probably look to see kind of the same results as that Chargers-Bills game the other day with Nate Peterman.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the Sharps, I think, would probably stay away from this game. If it's Brissett, they're going to come in on the Colts at 4.5 plus 4.5. But if not, then they're going to stay away from this game. The next game, you haven't posted a line yet because it's Seattle who's playing tonight. It's Seattle, San Francisco. It'll probably come up about Seattle -8. I'm saying that San Francisco is going to be the side the wise guys come in on because it's a lot of points for a team that actually plays tough. They had a couple of weeks where they didn't, but I think they would cover that game.
I think so too. And now suddenly that the win against the Giants, the San Francisco's win against the Giants, has a little bit more meaning to it than just beating up on a real bad team. So I think at home again with a young quarterback that's getting a little bit more seasons, with the more reps that he gets, and then facing a Seattle team who's coming off of a Monday night game in a short week. Laying 8 points for Seattle, I think the right side is to take the points there, just like we talked about with the home dogs.
New Orleans Rams, this is the other big one. I think that I think it's a 2.5. I think it's the exact right number. That's a tricky needle to thread. It's like they're basically the same exact teams. I think you went to 2.5 because you don't really get a home field advantage for the Rams. But like, they're public teams. They're the same teams. They're both really good. Like, I don't know how you book that game.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give something for the home field, and the Rams are certainly the public team, even though they. Both teams, I think the one thing that's kind of makes this betting interesting is that both of these teams went into last week as huge public teams. Most of the parlays were on the Rams against the Vikings, and most of the parlays were on the Saints against the Redskins. And I think the fact that both teams burned the betting public kind of made the betting on this one a little interesting. They're not totally on one side or the other. So in other words, had the Rams beat the Vikings, then this line would be 3. And vice versa. If the New Orleans Saints had just completely blown out the Redskins and the Rams still lost, then the betting would be closer to a pick'em. So, like you said, I think 2.5 is the right number. The betting public's on slightly higher on New Orleans. I'd say at about a 60 to 65% of the bets are on New Orleans. But there's bigger money on the Rams. I think that we were actually opened at 2 in the first bet. Was a few $1,000s on the Rams. So we've gotten some bigger money on the Rams and more tickets on the Saints.
I'm surprised by that. That's interesting. All right. Let's see. Jacksonville. I don't know, man. Do we have to talk about Jacksonville, Arizona? We don't know who's playing quarterback. It's going to be a corner TV game, even though I will say I think the Jags, I'm underplaying this, but I think the Jags and the Saints are going to play in the Super Bowl.
Wow. I wouldn't go that far, especially because of that logo. I just can't picture that logo in a Super Bowl.
It's happening, buddy.
But I will say kind of another short road favorite that's probably I'm leaning towards, kind of similar to Carolina and the Jets, only because I think Arizona has pretty much packed it in. Injuries, quarterbacks, bad play. There's not. You get to that point in the season where you know your season's over. You're trying to get through, and it's that first game after the realization that you're done that's the hardest to get up for. And then typically, with about 3 or 4 games left, teams usually kind of rally back around. They say let's finish strong, and then they put together another big game. But I think that first one after they really know that it's just done, and they're pretty much done, and that's the only thing that scares me in this.
Speaking of done, the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
That's a small number for a team as bad as the Broncos right now. 5-point dogs at the Raiders.
It is, but you got to look at this Raiders team, and the defense, or the lack of the defense, I should say, is the only thing that's keeping this line as low as it is. And that's secondary that just they can't get any interceptions. They have no pass rush. They're really on the defensive side. It's not what I would have expected from the Jack Del Rio team, but that's the one thing that's just really keeping this Oakland team from being higher favorites in this one. Denver's just another team that the betting public jumped off of long ago, and so 5 is kind of a dead number. Or it is a dead number, I should say, but I could see it kind of creeping up to 6. You're probably right. Maybe we'll right after the podcast. Maybe we'll test the waters at 5.5 and 6.
Why don't you do it while we're on? What's stopping you?
I'm going to go to 5.5 right now.
You just went to 5.5. We just changed the number,
now.
Ladies and gentlemen. It's like the Jerry Lewis Marathon. We have reached a significant milestone. We're going to 5.5. Oakland 5.5-point favorites over the Denver Broncos. Thank you very much. Green Bay is a 14-point, 13.5-point dog on the road at Pittsburgh. Boy, that team is not looking good.
Yeah, you know what I picture? I picture just what we went through with the Eagles and the Cowboys on the last Sunday night game. This next Sunday night game, after a long Thanksgiving Day weekend of all parlays, this game we're gonna need Green Bay for our lungs.
Yeah, there he said it.
Hopefully we keep the game under, because maybe that kind of saved us a little bit last week. So maybe if the game goes under, if Pittsburgh wins 20-0, that'll help us out a little bit.
All right, last game on the board. It's a Monday night game. It's being played on November 27th, a week from today. Houston is a touchdown dog at Baltimore, which is all of a sudden streaking towards the playoffs. Man.
Yeah, so it's a tough one because Houston actually looked pretty good and Savage looked pretty good, but again, it was against a Cardinals team that you really can't put too much stock in how many points they put up against that team. But the money's been coming in on Houston. We made Baltimore 7.5 point favorite, and the first couple of bets out of the gate were plus the 7.5 on Houston from the sharp guys. So it may be a little too strong for a Baltimore team that really doesn't garner a lot of public attention. So all the money so far has been one way, and this one it's all Houston. So we're gonna have to lower this line quite a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to do it right now?
Yeah. Nah, I don't know if I want to change this one yet. I got to take a little bit more Texan money because it is going to be the Monday night game, which is typically heavy on favorites. So I just got to wait a bit on this one.
All right, Scooch, guess what it's time for?
Roulette?
It's time for Scooch Roulette, and we're going to bring in Jonathan Addo.
Time to take down the hops.
When all hope is lost, all that's left is relief.
Let's play Scooch Roulette.
Jonathan Addo, how you doing, buddy? It's good to have you back on the podcast.
What's up, Chad? What's up, Scooch?
How you doing?
Very good, guys.
Listen, you are so popular. We couldn't. You haven't even done anything for the newsletter in the last month, but we had to bring you back on because dips are they're trending. They're practically trending on Twitter. No dips is trending.
How's that been working out, Scooch?
Well, I'll tell you, we had a pretty good week this week because of the Chiefs losing the game outright.
Thanks, Chad.
Had a couple.
I do what I can, brother. All right, we had an awkward silence there. I think Addo threw off the chemistry, like you were giving him a real answer, Scooch, and Addo came in and got so excited, like he thinks he owns the show now. He can come in and just throw off one-liners.
Yeah, no.
No, I was just thinking, Chad, I tweeted you like maybe 2 minutes too early in that Giants game last night, and you're like, I'm thinking about all the nightmare scenarios that could happen. We're up 3 plus 10. And I got the same feeling you did when you tweeted that. I was like, oh my God, I gotta delete my tweet now.
Well, you know what I was thinking? I was thinking about the
play,
that Chiefs Redskins game, right?
Yeah.
Earlier in the year, where I could easily see them the Giants scored too early. They're up 3. The Chiefs go down the field with 90 seconds left. They score a touchdown. Then they're they kick off, the Giants get the ball back, and they do something stupid, and all of a sudden the Chiefs end up winning by 11.
I was with you, like the Bucks game.
That was at the Bucks game?
Yeah, it happened in the Bucks yesterday. Bucks and Dolphins. I think the under got
moved. Totally got it. Yeah. No, it was actually the Jags and the Browns.
Both of them actually.
Yeah.
Because I think the Bucks was 44.
Yeah, it was not pretty. Not pretty for a lot of those backers. All right, Addo, listen. I want you to go first. You can give us your Scooch Roulette pick of the week.
You want some more? Do the people want some more tips? You think?
I think they want whatever you got, brother.
All right. So I guess people like my no dips tip. They like the. I think people get confused about the 405 special, but I'll just leave that alone. All you got to do, what I do every Sunday before the game, and which I actually did today because I got the phone call that I was coming back on the pod. You got to find your mark. You got to find your biggest sucker friend and call him at about 1:45, and just that. Yeah, everyone knows who that guy is already in their head. That guy's going to give you the biggest square pick he possibly can, and all you got to do is fade that pick. So, I called one of my friends, and he's going to listen to this, and he's going to freaking kill me. I'm not going to get no more picks out of this guy. But I called my friend today, and we went over some of the lines earlier, and he gave me a pick. This is not my Scooch Roulette pick, but he said Carolina big. So he said Green Bay big yesterday. He said Carolina big, so take probably the Jets. But I'm gonna go with my pick. I'm not gonna go against what he's saying for my Scooch Roulette pick. I love fading trendy dogs. I was looking for one today. I didn't spot anything that was too good of a trendy dog, but I'm seeing the Rams and the Saints. Rams are at home -2.5. St. Louis is getting most of the action. Give me the Los Angeles Rams for my Scooch Roulette pick.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
He's going in on the side of the wise guys. That's interesting. The wise guys came in early on the Rams too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do like the Rams myself as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting, Addo, that you talked about the Jets, because Scooch and I were both saying that like this is one of those games where we might like the roadside in this game. We might like Carolina in this game. I'm not saying I like them big, but I feel like the Jets have peaked, and so it's one of those rare scenarios where I probably wouldn't take a short home dog. But I like that you're going with the Rams. That shows some real wise guy intuition there. Scooch, who do you got?
Yeah. I'm going to take the Lions on Thanksgiving morning.
Nice.
Hell yeah, John, that's right, hometown. We actually made the line Lions 2 to start with, so just we're getting so much value now. The line moved 4.5 points, and the Lions are at home, so going with the Lions.
Dagnabbit, Scooch. I was going to take the Lions, so now I'm forced to take the Miami Dolphins plus the historic 17 for the year against the Patriots. I'm going for it. I'm just doing it. I'm going to be that guy who, when he sees the number, automatically bets the opposite side no matter how big it is, because it's so big, because it has to be done.
Yes.
On principle.
Yeah. I like it.
Fellas, listen. The podcast is over. Addo, you came back on. You gave us a great tip about calling your square buddies just for that one shot. You're going to come back on again, I have no doubt, because you have forced yourself into being a personality in our world, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. I'm like the leader of the syndicate, right?
You are the syndicate leader.
We're like the what do you call those guys on the Stern Show? The
Whack Pack.
The Whack.
You are the Whack Pack right now, Addo.
I'm the leader of the syndicate. Yeah. That's Whack Pack.
Exactly.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
fellas, have a great Thanksgiving.